everybody to Durham to this conference on new developments in community finance. I'm Sarah Banks and I'm Director of the Centre for Social Justice and Community Action here at Durham University. And we're delighted to have an event in the North East, particularly an event with a lot of very excellent local and national speakers. So those of us in the North East didn't have to get here till later, and then we couldn't find a parking space. So apologies to all those of you who've been searching for parking spaces. The event has been funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, and the money was obtained by Jonna Montgomery of Goldsmiths, University of London, through her Political Economy Research Centre. So we were delighted when Jonna invited us to collaborate with her and her team, which includes Daniel Tischer from Manchester Business School, to run this event here in the North East. Other collaborators are Thrive Teesside, a community organisation based in Stockton that works with people in poverty and has done a lot of work on debt and high-cost credit. Tracy and Kath, wave your arms, you two, are there if any of you want to talk to Thrive, and Thrive has got a presentation later. We're also in collaboration with FinCan. Alison Baxter, who's the former Regional Development Manager, is going to be chairing the next session, and Kath Mitchell is somewhere in the audience. Kath is at the back there. Kath has just taken over from Alison, so if you want to catch Kath while she's still new in post and she can offer you a few things, then you can seek her out. So it's an excellent partnership, and I'm very grateful to Daniel and also to Tim Hall from the University of East London, who's been helping to plan the programme and organise the event, and particularly Emma Reno, our secretary, who's there at the back and registering you all. If any of you want university Wi-Fi, Emma's got some little slips at the back, you can pop there and get the university Wi-Fi. The Twitter hashtag is on the front of your programme. In fact, in a minute I'll write it on there. It's hash, capital R, E, capital T, think, CU. So do get tweeting. Those of you who like tweeting, and even those of you who don't are going to be forced to tweet in order to publicise the event. So I think that's really all I need to say, other than just to reiterate that I'm so delighted we've got so many excellent speakers. This is a topic that we in the Centre for Social Justice and with Thrive Teesside have been working on, particularly the effect of the financial austerity on people on low incomes, and what role can community finance, CDFIs, credit unions play. So I'm really looking forward to this event, hoping to learn a lot and perhaps to take forward some more research ideas with Thrive. I hope you're listening, Thrive, for the future. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Daniel, who will introduce his section.
Also, thank you very much for coming. Coming along today. As you can see, this page has been open for much of the morning. The reason is that we have published a report today looking at credit unions and their involvement or potential involvement in payday lending. And that report is now available on the Perth website, but I will be talking about that actually. But I just had that still on there, so I thought I'd leave it. This is not the right presentation. So, just very briefly, this report wasn't meant to come out just yet, but we have decided on short notice to publish the report now. And I would really like to extend my thank yous to my colleagues at Goldsmiths and at the Pro Research Centre for getting the report formatted and edited for today's event. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. And the report is available from the Perth website, and you can download it. I have a few copies with me at the back, so for those interested, please have a look at it. Just again to reiterate, we're running a hashtag experiment today, so for those of you who are tweeting, please get involved and give us your thoughts and ideas and questions via Twitter. And also you may have seen some of those white sheets of paper that you see. It would be great if as many of you could fill in a few sentences for each of the three questions. It's just a way for us to get some further ideas on research areas you people are interested in. Obviously, academics have one way of thinking about problems, but then local councillors and credit unions themselves might find other issues more important to be dealt with. Okay, now I'm going to give you a very brief summary of the report. Obviously, I only have a few minutes to do so, so let's see if we can manage that. The report is published by myself and Carl Packman, who's sitting in the middle there. Raise your arm, Carl. There you go. And John Montgomery, who is a goldsmith. And the project, just very briefly, so I already mentioned, it's an ESRC-funded project. And the point of the project is really to look at alternative politics of debt within the UK. So we're looking at the issue of debt from various angles, and my workshop deals specifically with credit unions and the issue of indebtedness. The report, to oversimplify it, first examines the recent expansion of credit unions in the UK and looks at to what extent it can continue to expand, or they can continue to expand as they have done so recently. And secondly, it seeks to explore the extent to which the market for entering the market for short-term credit presents a strategic option for credit unions. Obviously, the issue has been raised through the Church of England, has received a high profile in the news, so we thought we'd look a bit further into this particular issue. Most of you familiar with credit unions will have seen those statistics. It shows the quite substantial expansion of the credit union movement over the past 10 years or so. Members and assets have doubled in that period, and you also have loans extended to customers increasing quite substantially. And this data excludes Northern Ireland, so it's just looking at the Scotland, Wales, and England itself. But the question here is really, at what cost did this expansion happen? Now, first of all, the number of credit unions has declined. Now, this is not necessarily an issue in itself. Part of the credit union movement is seeking to consolidate and to create larger credit unions. But what is more interesting is that actually the number of V2 credit unions, this is what we're working here, has actually not increased since 2005. So we only have about 10 version 2 credit unions offering a bigger amount of services and products. So something is not quite happening here as we expected to. And one of the crucial points is that loans as a total percentage of assets, or as a percentage of total assets, has actually declined quite significantly over the last 10 years, from 73% to 56%. And this indicates quite strongly to us that it's increasingly difficult for credit unions to generate income, to cover their costs, and also to pay decent dividends to their members. And when we're looking at the number of loans in arrears as a percentage of total loans, we can see that to some extent the expansion has not just generated a larger sector itself, but it has also produced some unfortunate developments in terms of the loans in arrears. So we can see that in England specifically, the loans have spiked to 12%, almost doubled in the period of expansion. Those values are not quite the same for Scotland, because the Scottish credit union sector has been more established and been a bit more developed before that. But those kind of figures are quite problematic, and when it comes to talk about the further expansion of the credit union movement, it suggests that loans are increasingly risky, so there's some issues there. And actually, when we're looking at the kind of regional distribution, we can see that developments in England were strongest, so assets have increased more strongly in England as a region than in other regions, but still the penetration of the market or population is still considerably lower than, for example, in Scotland. So this leaves us with a kind of picture of the industry, or the credit union sector that is quite fragmented. There's efforts to expand, but not necessarily scope to expand much further over the next decade or so. And if there is growth, it may be linked to certain credit unions rather than to the movement as a whole. So the question we then raised is this short-term credit the answer? So first of all, what I did is I looked at news coverage of credit unions since, I think it's about 2005 I'm starting. So in the pre-Valby announcement era, so Valby made this announcement on the 29th of June 2013, we have this development here. So we have an increased interest in credit unions. This is only for half a year, so it's probably going to be higher if you look at the whole year. And the story that was generally being portrayed in the media is one of credit unions as alternative to mainstream banks. This is just a very general way of thinking about news coverage in that period. If we're looking at credit unions in the post-Valby announcement kind of era, we can see that there was a huge spike in July, just after the announcement, in terms of credit union coverage in the media. But what happened now is that credit unions have been positioned as an alternative to payday lenders, quite widely spread. And the two main people, and I'm sorry you can't really see it that well here, but the two main people discussed in those newspaper articles are Justin Valby himself and Emil, what was his name? The former CEO of Wonga.
Harold Bainbridge.
There we go. I knew two people at least. I always forget his name. So there's a change in how credit unions are discussed, at least in the mainstream media. So we thought this in itself suggests that there's some expectations that credit unions would enter that market. Now, there have been quite a few discussions about the usefulness of this. So in particularly, credit unions entering this particular market would be of benefit to consumers or to customers that are in the greatest needs of those products. So the cost of, for example, doing a payday loan through credit unions would be about £18, excluding additional fees, for example, membership fees. So call it £20 for 3 months, at the 3% rate. So I've included the new maximum interest rate here. Whereas in a payday lender, the same cost would be about £344. So there's an £144 versus £20 cost for the borrowers. And we can see that if we think about credit unions as institutions that have a purpose or whose purpose is to alleviate poverty, then clearly there's something in this particular type of lending. If we go further, if we compare to CDFIs as well, credit unions are still considerably cheaper or would be able to offer those products at a considerably lower cost. So to some extent we encourage credit unions to go into, to enter this market. But, and there's always a but, so we've looked at the Transact case study with the London Mutual Credit Union, which was the first pilot project running payday loans to, or within the credit union sector. They have gained an additional 331 members. However, the report essentially says that going into the market at 2% is loss-making. Now the losses were reduced when taking other income into account. So originally they posted a loss of £20,000, but taking other income into account generated from those new members that only joined for payday loans, then the loss has been reduced to £6,500 effectively. Now, if we look at this lending or this case study at a 3% interest cap, then the loss would be £4,000 to begin with. And if we then think about the additional income that could be generated, we actually find that in this particular case study, the entering the payday market would have actually generated a profit. We can only estimate the profit, but there would be a profit. The first thing I want to mention here, this case study was obviously done under certain conditions, and they had probably quite a selection of loans, and they may have refused quite a few loans as well because of the risk. So we don't want to be overly positive here. But what we're suggesting is there is a way of actually doing payday lending in a sustainable way for credit unions. We would suggest that, you know, under the 3% interest cap, there is a way for it to be profitable, especially considering additional income generated through those new members. We would also suggest that it might be worth looking at a public subsidy or a subsidy for the banking sector more generally, to prop up some of these developments in the beginning, or a combination of both indeed. Now, just very quickly to come to the recommendations of the report, and it's all very much condensed. Apologetic for that, but we think that payday lending would be or could be an opportunity for the sector, a strategic opportunity for the sector to engage in. We would suggest that it needs some kind of partial funding from particularly mainstream banks. This links to the Community Reinvestment Act in America, where certain areas that are not actually served by the big banks are being funded, or those big banks are then funding credit union. They fund credit unions in those areas. So that would be kind of a very straightforward policy to introduce in the UK. The third one is to create a market for credit unions and CDFIs to engage in this endeavour jointly. Now clearly CDFIs need to expand further for this to be an option. But what we're thinking is, first of all, a syndication of loans might be a way forward, where some smaller credit unions can share the risk of lending out to new members who require these type of services. Obviously, it needs to be regulatory or legislative change needs to be introduced for that to happen. But we also think that payday lending, payday lending is quite it's a big problem in big cities. I'm not too sure how big a problem it might be in rural areas where a lot of credit unions are active in. But what we were thinking is by having this kind of market established, rural credit unions could also tap into this income source. So there wouldn't be kind of a huge geographic issue in engaging in payday lending. And then lastly, it's just more generally strengthen ties with CDFIs. If you want to do payday lending and you can't price the risk within your credit union, recommend them to a CDFI rather than letting them go back to a payday lender itself. So anyway, that is the report in 5 minutes. I hope it made sense. It does make sense in my head, but maybe if you have questions, I think we have some time later to answer them. So thank you very much for listening. And as I said, there's some copies on the report available, or you can download it from the website. Okay, and now I'll pass it over to